the average life expectancy of Deonar in around the landfill, the biggest landfill in Mumbai, is less than 50 years.
That's shocking.
You have a newborn baby smoking 25 cigarettes a day. I mean, that was the quality of air our city was giving us. Los Angeles had these issues. China, all cities in China had
London
these
had these issues.
If you build a metro, dig a road, you'll be coughing around that area. So AI sustainability is a huge topic. It takes 10 iPhones worth of battery life for every ChatGPT query. You're not counting the 20 years of energy it took to making you smart. Okay, my name's Anant Goenka, Executive Director of the Indian Express Group, and we're excited to starting a joint venture with Mr. Mukund Rajan's ECube. ECube is a passionate team of people who understand sustainability and understand skilling for a green world. And we are creating a platform with them called Earth Inherited, which is going to, I hope, create a community which is going to make a massive impact in India.
This is Mukund Rajan of ECube. I'm delighted to be here today on the occasion of the formalization of our partnership with the Indian Express. Very happy to be here with Anant Goenka, who I know as this fearless champion of many causes and somebody who's done it at a very young age, really been a role model for young people in this country. And the Indian Express always stood for the journalism of courage. I think that's part of what you really need to push the agenda on sustainability in this country, and delighted therefore to be working with them to create this platform where we would invite everyone from kids in school to senior corporate leaders to participate in the conversation and help us to create a more sustainable India and a more sustainable world.
A lot of gravitas and weight to your name.
Thank you.
Huh? Mukund is the green guy at Tata Group.
I think I was very fortunate, if at all, that allusion to my role at Tata's has created that image. I was very lucky because this is, of course, linked to my role as brand custodian. And for Tata's, the brand significantly relied on our reputation for doing good work with communities, a reputation for CSR, a reputation for caring for the environment.
Yeah.
Let me just mention that actually my interest in sustainability and environment actually goes back much before I even joined the Tatas. I was at Oxford. I was a chemical engineer who had gone to study political science and international relations. And I was looking for a dissertation subject to do research in the area of politics. And at that time, you'll remember India had a pretty feisty environment minister, Maneka Gandhi. And there was this new issue called ozone depletion.
What year was this?
This is 88, 89, 90 and 91. When the Antarctic ozone hole emerged as a major issue of concern. Because the ozone layer was getting depleted, you had radiation that was coming directly. Countries like Australia, South Africa were reporting increases in cases of skin cancer. And it was suddenly becoming this alarming issue. And the ozone hole is apparently being caused by ozone depleting substances which come through products that all of us use in everyday life. Deodorants, the stuff that goes into refrigerators, air conditioners, coolants. So the international community came together and said we need to solve this problem. Therefore, we're going to migrate from ozone depleting substances to non-ozone depleting substances. But guess what? Very few companies in the world have the technology to do that, typically in the West. And Maneka Gandhi was India's environment minister in the VP Singh government. And she said, this is crazy. We didn't really contribute very much to the problem. Now you're asking us to pay for the solution and to buy technology from companies in the North or the West that have this. That's not fair. And that started this whole debate around global environmental issues that all countries in a sense contribute to. And if you want a resolution, everyone has to collaborate and cooperate to offer that solution. But the question is who pays the costs?
Right.
And I thought this is a fantastic subject to research.
Yeah.
And that started my induction into ozone depletion, climate change, global warming, tropical deforestation, and the loss of biodiversity. So I wrote a book based on all of that, which I researched eventually for my doctorate.
Yeah.
But enough about me. Tell me about yourself. I know that you're passionate about this subject, which is why we're working together on this project. What led you to this?
Your Kida started in 88, you said what you said?
Yeah.
So I think mine was 2020.
Whoa.
So, I mean, in a sense, we're all conceptually tree huggers and we all like to see green.
Yeah.
But I think when it became close to the heart was when it comes home, when it hurts you at home, right? And I was a new dad, and post-COVID, the kids coming out of home were always struggling, and so my son was getting into he was getting sick a lot of coughs and respiratory stuff.
Right.
And I was literally in my son's nursery school. There were 12 kids in the class, and there were 8 on the Huff Puff at the age of 3.
God.
There were 8 sort of
inhalers.
Wow. And it just made my wife and I curious, and it really just came down to us getting really upset about the lack of interest there was across everybody with any power in this in our society, whether it's corporate, whether it's politicians, whether it's bureaucrats, whether it's even media. And like we were, technically we all love green and we all love sustainability. We want the world to be a bluer, greener, nicer place. But you don't do anything about it. We say we want it, but then our behavior is completely at odds. And where it came close to home was when it came down to pollution specifically.
Right.
People still don't realize how it can be that Bombay, with all the sea breeze,
Right.
Has such debilitatingly poor quality air. And I think we played a big role, Express played a big role in making that a mainstream issue.
You ran a campaign for
We ran a
some
campaign
time.
called Death by Breath.
Right.
We ran that campaign actually in Delhi in 2000, before Commonwealth Games.
I see.
And that led to all the CNG in the Delhi public transportation. That whole thing came from our campaign. There was a big impact of our campaign. Sheila Dikshit was a CM. Courts took suo moto of our reporting, and then again the air got. I don't know how much of a big impact it made, but Delhi air also there was a temporary impact that we were able to. But Bombay we never imagined that Mumbai also would
Who
need
would have
that.
thought? Yeah, in
Who
this
would have
city.
thought, right? We did a report and we did analysis, and you have a newborn baby smoking 25 cigarettes a day. That was the quality of air that our city was giving us, and no one cared. It's not a debatable thing, right? Like, this has to come out. You have to make noise about it. You got to scream about it. But we got literally no support. Like, zero. Literally, we would ask like business people, we'd ask celebrities to kind of post or share, and everybody was like, no, I don't want to get in trouble with the government. I don't want to get in trouble with, but it was like, what trouble? You're bringing the issue out. I think we had to start with the awareness. And we did it. It was, in a sense, a lone battle. But then it became something that people caught on to it. High Court took suo moto. An NGO filed a PIL, got clubbed in together. Now the courts are moving very hard on it. It's an ongoing case. And we have made impact. One of the things that shocked us was, in the city of London, they're building a subway. You wouldn't even know it. You can walk the street. And London is the most dysfunctionally governed city right now in the world, right? You build a metro, dig a road, you'll be coughing around that area, you will know it. You'll be very aware that there's so much dust coming up. We had no dust mitigation policies. We had no garbage burning policies. You're burning a single-use diaper with a banana peel and a single-use plastic bottle. All of these things go into the air end of the day. We revealed in our reporting that the average life expectancy for people living around the area of Deonar is less than 50 years.
That's shocking. Yeah.
Less than 50 years.
Yeah.
Because the air they're breathing around that landfill is so toxic, right?
Right.
You have 70% organic waste that's sitting and composting with all these, with disposed batteries. If there is enough citizen pressure and it'll lead to political will, there's enough political will, so many things can be done.
Correct.
And things are happening. Put some solid dust mitigation norms for construction sites. City of Mumbai, again, this is all very Mumbai specific, but it's happening all over the country.
Well, the statistics suggest that if you look at the most polluted cities in the world, a significant chunk of the top 30 most polluted are in India.
9 of the top 10 most polluted last I checked were from India.
And as you said, I think now citizen action, media commentary, the judiciary are all now beginning to put more pressure to resolve these issues.
I think so. I don't know whether it will ever become a center of market election issue. At least not. I can't say in the next 5 years, the next 10 years will be a center of market election issue. Los Angeles had these issues. China, all cities in China had
London
these issues.
had these issues.
London
in the 50s, the London fog,
Paris,
smog, all of that used to.
Paris, Seoul, Tokyo, every city has gone through this. And they've solved it. But we have not even shown any signs of wanting to solve it. So that's actually what makes this exciting. I'm talking specifically about pollution, but I think overall the environment is something which rallies society together.
In fact, this point about health impacts, productivity impacts, even with climate change and global warming, productivity that suffers during the summer, loss of life also because of heat waves. People are now beginning to tabulate all of that. And hopefully we'll be able to document all of this, not just in terms of the doom and gloom, which is obviously an issue, but also the constructive solutions that can emerge.
100%.
And it leads me also on the financial incentive side. So let me give you an anecdote from the past, my previous life in Tata's. So when I was chairing the Sustainability Council, this would have been, I think, 2015 probably. We were debating what are the major sustainability challenges that a group like Tata's, India's largest corporate house, should engage with. Just before one particular meeting was when Norges Bank, the Norwegian sovereign, decided they were going to decarbonize their portfolio.
Okay.
And one of the stocks they picked to divest from was Tata Power. which is, of course, our energy production company in the
The
Tata
large
Group.
shareholder?
Probably close to around 1%,
That's a large shareholder.
which is significant in the context of
course.
holdings in Tata Power. And overnight, they divested the stake, obviously the implication of the share price temporarily. But that was the one action of an investor taking a constructive action in their mind to divest from stocks that had too much reliance on fossil fuels. That then led to Tata Power eventually embracing a strategy to completely pivot from thermal power to renewables. A few years back, they actually publicly announced they would not build any new coal-fired thermal plants.
Right.
And they're now one of the largest renewable players in the country. More recently, because of some of the issues with coal and so on, they've, I think, suggested that they might get back briefly into some amount of thermal power, partly because the grid stability will require some amount of coal-fired thermal
100%.
temporarily. But they are continuing to focus on renewables. So when the incentives and the market pressures sort of work together, you actually get very significant strategic choices that get made even by the corporate world. And I experienced that in Tata's. And the climate agenda, amongst other things, was going to have a huge impact on Indian industry. And the smarter companies, the more forward-looking CEOs would see this and start taking actions.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, that's what you're seeing. The large corporates, many of whom also have a footprint overseas, many of them rely significantly on export markets. I think the pressure is coming from multiple points, and the large corporates, I think, are probably better prepared and doing more about these issues. But my hunch is, and I suspect the data speaks to that, the mid-market and the MSMEs is where there's less awareness, less capacity, more need for finance and technology. And that's where I think a lot of our attention going forward will need to come. How can these companies be supported?
That's exactly, I think, where Earth Inherited comes in, right? Like
Absolutely.
we want to just kind of be able to become that repository for helping people go down that path.
Correct.
I think even this lovely anecdotal story that you just mentioned, right? Like I think we need more reminders about this, that the market and green aren't at odds.
Correct. So here's a question. What we are seeing today in the Middle East with the pressure that movement of fossil fuel is coming under, is it your sense that in India, and one has to give credit to the government for the focus on renewable energy, solar power, wind power, but now for national security reasons.
That's the point, exactly.
Would it actually be the game changer we needed to focus a lot more effort on what you have domestically? You have sunshine, you have wind, you have biomass, and potentially in the near future, green hydrogen.
I think it's a huge untapped, like a natural resource almost, right? Like if you think about it like any other natural resource, it's there, just waiting to be exploited. And it is easier to do than it was even 5 years ago.
Right.
The technologies come up for that. But I feel like it is access to the information, skills and knowledge that is coming in the way. So I think it's actually right now a shortage, not as much of willpower as much as of imagination. That these things can be used to help us in the geopolitics of the world. Because right now you feel like we talk renewable, there is a notion that you're going to be dependent on China.
Right.
It falls down on that. And so the government is making a lot of effort to not be dependent on China while going on that path. 100% they're making that effort. But I think it's a big part of our role also will be just to spread the skills required for that, for us not being as dependent as today we might have to be. Whatever it is, whether it is coming from sort of organically or whether it's being forced by geopolitics or it's being forced by national security. But I think it's real, it's here to stay.
And I think one of the sort of efforts we want to make with this platform is support communities. It could be communities of parents interested in sustainability. How do you organize your kid's next birthday party without balloons that are plastic, single use that are going to clog out something. And then communities of chief sustainability officers who get together, have a platform, have a forum where they can exchange ideas, exchange best practices, talk about the new trends that they're seeing. So I think that's going to be a big part of our effort with Earth Inherited. The other is education, as you said. How do you train, make people more aware, offer skills building programs? So really open up the platform to ensure that there is constant communication, new content, information on what are the rules and regulations, how can people adapt to those. So a lot that can be done, I think, through this platform. So question for you, I mean, you did those campaigns at the Express, but the idea of Earth Inherited, what appealed to you about the platform itself?
No, honestly, I mean, like we're all passionate about the idea. So I think the starting point is the passion that of doing, it's all Express has a problem. We keep going, trying to fight good fights and to a fault. So I think the time has come from an audience interest perspective. Firstly, secondly, we're not going to be dependent on just views. I mean, it's going to be a sustainable, pun unintended, business model, right? We're thinking about a way where it's not just content; it's beyond content. And I think the world in my industry, if I call it industry, the way we think about content and communities now, everything's got a micro niche. At Indian Express, we're the only news organization in India with 4,500 newspapers India has. We're the only one that has a climate change editor. We consistently reporting on science, environment, climate change, all that stuff. It has a certain impact, but the world is moving towards one of micro communities. So if you double down on a particular area and have domain expertise in that area, so we're going to say that there's a certain domain expertise that's going to be built and a community being built around Earth and Heritage. And I think media now is about having a direct relationship with the customer.
Right.
This is a way to do it. This is a sustainable way to do it. Examples of this having worked in other parts of the world.
Right.
This model that we kind of put together. So I'm excited. I'm excited about doing it.
Terrific. And in fact, what I think struck me when we started talking about this for the first time, too much of the coverage in conventional, traditional media on issues like this tends to be predicated on doom and gloom. People are left feeling distraught, anxious, and there's no solution that's been really talked about.
Correct.
Because the next big headline takes over.
Correct.
Whereas I think this idea that you're committed to of something that is 24/7, constant engagement, feeding constructive solutions, giving people a path forward, marrying the interests of commerce, business, community, society, non-profits, bringing all of them together.
As you absolutely rightly said, like our reporting on climate is doom and gloom. And doom and gloom it's actually not reporting on climate, it's reporting on the loss.
Right.
It could have been a bomb blast, it could have been a flood. It doesn't matter. The story is actually the same.
Correct.
But here our idea is to go deeper into the cause of the doom and gloom, the causes,
Right.
and like you said, the solutions.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of solutions. And you know what? These things feed off each other. You never know what inspires the next solution. It's a good investment to make.
It is also coming at a time, I think, when India is also seeing so much startup activity. So there are young kids in school also coming up with innovative ideas. And you talked about waste management, segregation at home, things like that. So it'll be lovely to sort of give them also a voice, make them part of the process through which you sort of throw up ideas.
100%. If I add AI to this whole mix, right, just to confuse us further, man, it's so like, the thing is that you got to be on top of it. You can't just sit back and kind of be ignorant about it.
Absolutely.
So AI and sustainability is a huge topic.
You interviewed Sam Altman recently.
I interviewed Sam Altman recently.
Any sort of learnings or insights?
There's one very fascinating thing that he said, which I should talk about. But before that, talk about Bill Gates. So I interviewed him about a year and a half before the Sam Altman interview, I think. So the research with Bill Gates, I was told that it takes 10 iPhones worth of battery life for every ChatGPT query.
Whoa.
So if you ask ChatGPT, what's the color of the sky? It will take ChatGPT 10 iPhones worth of battery life of energy to process and give you an answer. That's enormous, right? So suppose I asked Bill that if India were to actually become an AI first society, is there how do you get that kind of energy in the world where everybody's going to be computing with 10 iPhones, like for every query? Imagine like 800 million connected Indians on the internet are doing 10 queries a day or even 5 queries a day on ChatGPT. That's like, just imagine the number of energy that needs. So he gave a very interesting answer. He said that, look, AI is going to evolve much like human brains evolved. So if you ask a particular query to ChatGPT, if it takes a X amount of units of energy, a human mind will take 100,000th that amount of energy to give you the same answer. Because we have evolved, our mind has evolved over these. The evolution has helped our minds become efficient in using energy for cognitive abilities. So the same thing will happen with AI. It will happen obviously faster than it happens with human beings. So I asked this question to Sam. I said, now 1 year ago the number was 10 iPhones worth of battery. Now I believe the number is 1 iPhone. So Bill's thing is working out. In 1 year it's come from 10, it's become 1/10 the amount of energy. Sam said it's nowhere close to that. He said it's nowhere close to one iPhone worth of battery. It's much, much less. I said, interesting. So is the evolution happening like a human mind's evolution? And then he said something which became very controversial, at least in America. He said that, look, you think you're comparing the amount of energy a human being takes for a cognitive function. You're not counting the 20 years of energy it took to making you smart.
Growing up, going to school,
going to school, the food you ate, or the carbon footprint of the food you ate, all of that stuff. It's a very interesting comparison. I thought a very interesting parallel he drew. That made a lot of news, but it just I think that it showed two things. My interview with Sam showed two things. For me, it was revelatory. One is that he and Musk are the complete opposite ends in terms of space. Musk said the best way for data centers and even for energy creation is in space, because there's always sunlight in space. The other thing that he said was, and which Sam said, no way. We just don't have. We're not going to take over space in terms. It's just not feasible. The second thing that I thought was interesting was exactly this: that the speed at which it's becoming energy efficient was fascinating. So I think obviously you would expect Sam Altman to say something like that, but it really left me with a lot of conviction that this is the path the world's going to go in. It's going to go on a very AI first path. And we are going to have the most ambitious infrastructure creation that the world has ever seen.
Absolutely.
Some of it will be sustainable, some of it will be unsustainable, some of it will be just bad carbon footprint wise. But how do we deal with this? How do we deal with a robotic first world, with a robot first world? How do we deal with living with 500 GPUs for every individual? These are significant conversation starters from a sustainability perspective.
Right.
It's a huge beat that we really have to double down on.
It reminds me of a very interesting recommendation that was made during COVID. Everyone was wondering, where are we going to bring back the jobs that were being lost because of the big impact that COVID had during the lockdown and thereafter. And there's a former Ministry of New and Renewable Energy Secretary who's been pushing this agenda of distributed power, primarily through solar, rooftop solar at that, in every village. And if you accept the proposition that AI is going to need computing capability all the way to the edge, you really want to put power, energy, and computing capability in the hands of every Indian wherever they are. You don't want to necessarily draw them into the cities. And so could you do that with all your 600,000 plus villages in India? Create jobs also. What are the kinds of jobs? So the guys will put solar panels on the roof, make sure it's angled appropriately the sun, so you maximize the conversion factor. When it needs to be replaced or cleaned or there's some problems, they can change it. You create a bunch of jobs for that also. But more importantly, now with what AI can do, you're ensuring that this computing capability is available everywhere in the country. And energy sources are local and available. So it's not something you depend on supply from some remote part of the country or a large thermal facility, 600 kilometers away, but it's right there at your doorstep. Very interesting possibilities. The flip side to that is, of course, the other things that AI can do to you. But it's precisely all of these conversations that are now picking up momentum that need a channel to 100%. Express themselves and to figure out what is the right thing to do.
Correct.
We keep talking about having a whole of society approach to the challenges of the day. Certainly on issues of sustainability, climate change, we need a whole of society approach. Who all are going to be involved? How will they be involved? What capacity building is required? What technology will be deployed? How do you ensure there's a just transition from hard to abate sectors? Everyone has to be involved in the conversation. Hopefully that's the platform that Net provides.
But however it pans out, I'll be very happy with making such a good, committed effort.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Great working with you.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah, to our success.
Yes, to you.
Thank you.